All right, I'm gonna call this meeting to order at 6:01. Roll call. Glenn is approved absence. Blake?
Here.
Robert? Merle?
Here.
Jenny?
Here.
Kelsey?
Here.
Crystal? Here. You'll join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Try to open the floor for an agenda consideration motion.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Do we have any public comment? Okay, moving on. We're at board communication.
And we have two students that if they could come before us here, introduce yourselves and your role within ASB, and then you can go ahead and give your report.
Okay, hi, my name is Doris Valencia and I'm the president of ASB.
My name is Aliana Garza and I'm the vice president of ASB.
Take it away.
Welcome.
Yeah. So for this year, me and Ali really want to focus on including everybody. Like, I feel like inclusivity is one of our main goals and also having a really fun year for everyone.
It was a very hard, I think, a difficult election. Thankfully, our principal, Mr. Stanley, he did a very good job of just getting it together and getting everyone's opinions on how the election should go. So now that that's over, we're really focusing the next few weeks on homecoming, and prioritizing that right now.
Normally, we don't ask questions, but I'm gonna go ahead and ask you a question. So what do you think about our homecoming plan, the homecoming plans for October 9th and all that's going on that day? What are your thoughts?
Were you guys still planning on doing homecoming like the same day as all like the games and stuff?
So that's when the homecoming football game is. Obviously, there's gonna be a dance that I'll let you guys take care of planning and putting that together, but I'm just more curious about your thoughts on having all those games from right after school all evening. What are your thoughts?
I like it. I think it's a good idea. I think it's fun for everyone. It gives everyone a chance to kind of go to each other's games, and then the next day is homecoming. I think it's a good concept and a good idea.
Good.
Yeah,
Tell all your friends to be there.
and I feel like it'll be easier for those who don't have like transportation to go from place to place. So having like the games back to back is really good. And like if everything's like just walking distance, so it's fine, you know?
Great.
So can you spell your name for me?
Yeah, it's DORIS.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the future, welcome. Thank you for coming and being here. If you would like to bring dates and what each club is up to and what you're planning for the future, we would love all that information and kind of a report out for all the different ones. Because school board members try to come and be present at some times and everything. So do you have any other questions for us?
Or
Mm,
updates?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe like the only update right now would probably be just like for like the themes and stuff of games, like we're like taking an approach of doing something new this year. We're putting out votes like on Instagram, so
Mhm.
like everybody can put their opinion on there and see what they like best. And this Friday's game theme is blackout. Everybody
Okay.
should blackout, so.
Great. That's awesome. I saw it come across there. I thought that was a really good idea.
Yeah.
I think it was really important for the whole school to have a vote and what our whole school themes are, because I think last year it was just ASB and some students really didn't agree with some themes, and not everyone's gonna agree, obviously, but I think it's important to get everyone's opinions, so that way we can have just more of an open mind.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay, we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
You and any?
They're not gonna be here tonight. We do have
Okay.
kind of a new plan moving forward, so
Perfect.
whether they are on the agenda or not, kind of depends on whether they have anything to add.
Awesome. We will acknowledge the extended field trip for the district FFA leadership camp, September 28th through the 29th in Turner, Oregon. Any questions? You good?
Merle has
Yeah.
one.
Merle.
I did have one question about the 1 to 15 ratio chaperone to students.
Mhm.
I don't know if the 15 is final. I know once before we asked Deanne about that and they arranged to have more than one person in supervision, but
I'd have to look into that.
Okay. So Dan can get back to you. Okay, just a note that the OSBA Fall Regional Meeting is October 1st in Salem at WASD. That's actually what I've gone to before and it was helpful to kind of just see what's going on around the OSBA and around our region. There's also one, the OSBA Annual Conference, November 6th through 8th. So if you're interested in going to that one, up in Portland, there's an agenda, keynote speaker notes, and you would just let Diane know and she can get registered. All right, consent agenda. If you've had a moment to read it, I'd entertain a motion.
I had a question or comment on the minutes.
Let's make a motion first and then we can open up for
Okay.
discussion. So I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as proposed.
I second.
Okay, discussion, you had a question? Laura?
Just for, not that critical probably, but for the record, the board retreat and workshop is listed as August 30th rather than September.
Hmm,
There was another paragraph there that just kind of trailed off. I'm not sure where it should have gone. I really didn't notice that until just the last minute. It's on page 6 of 7. Should OSBA draft policies remain consistent, the board adoption process is expected to be straightforward. However, if revisions result in broader or less restrictive language, additional board. And it stops there.
Okay. Do you want to amend your motion to take out these minutes or you want to leave it?
I'll amend the motion to remove the board meeting minutes until they're finalized, but move forward with approving the HR personnel report for September.
Okay, second? Any other discussion?
Thanks.
So just to reiterate that, we are voting on the consent agenda to only include part A, the HR personnel, with an update being needed to the board meeting minutes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Consent agenda part A carries. Business and budget.
Hi, Kim.
Hello. Thank you, board members, and appreciate the opportunity to present with you this evening. Excuse me, within the agenda, we have a link to a memo for this evening. And wanted to kind of highlight some of the background information before we really jump into the presentation. I think it's really critical that our board has the information they need to be able to be as informed as possible. You're faced with some really big decisions from time to time and more often than not. And I really think that, you know, there are so many decisions that do have a financial impact, whether it be direct or indirect, that it's important that we make sure you have the information you need. So that is the goal with what I present to you as we move forward. And we are always welcome to feedback because we want to make sure that we're providing you with what you need to feel informed and be able to make those decisions that are best for the students and district. So let's start with presentation here tonight, and wanted to, we'll be going through a couple of slides tonight. In the financial memo, there is a new format for a financial report. And I want to take a few moments tonight to just kind of highlight, while there's a lot of numbers, a lot of figures on there, what are those key things that we should be looking at? And what are those indicators that we should be watching? And then great question was asked in the past. I appreciate Merle asking this. What's included when we call something, when we title something? So I have something I'm going to share with you tonight on that's going to help provide some of that background. And then the projections and variances that are part of this report and explaining why these are important. So our next slide presents a bit of a snapshot of the actual financial report. The financial report itself is a PDF document that everyone can download through the agenda, through the memo. But your financial report begins at the top with a summary of revenues. And what this is doing is down your left-hand side is giving you some categories. Your first couple columns are showing our prior year revenues year to date, meaning as of the date of this report, where were we a year ago? And what percentage of the budget did that represent? And then in the green section, the larger section is showing our current year, 2025-26 figures as year-to-date actuals. Where are we as of the date of the report? What percent of the budget does that represent? What was that budgeted figure that you as a board and our budget committee adopted? And then projected total and variances. So what I'm sharing with you tonight, the projected totals are the budgeted values as shown. We are getting ready to process our first payroll of the new fiscal year. That alone, as we know, we're in the people business. Payroll represents the majority of our budget, and processing that payroll, getting that fine-tuned and what we call encumbering those expenses for the rest of the year. What do we think that payroll is going to look like by employee, by each health insurance plan they chose, by their PERS tier, by their workers' comp code? We get all those things put together, and then we can encumber the entire year and then project where are we going to be. That's on the expense side, of course. This here that you're looking at is the revenue side. That is driven by a lot of information that we're going to be getting in the next couple of days, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But wanted to point out tonight that the projections in this financial report are just the adopted budget numbers. Moving forward, you will see live projections where I'm going to indicate in this far right column, do we think we're going to have a favorable outcome as compared to the budget? So in terms of revenues, favorable would be revenue in excess of what was budgeted. Unfavorable, obviously, we're missing, potentially projecting less revenue than budgeted. On the expense side, it would be favorable if our expenses are going to come in under what we budgeted. So it's a bit of a two-sided thing. But what I wanted to point out on the next slide, though, is on the next slide here, if we can go to that. These columns, and I apologize, I'm not sure why the second red cell is not there. The percent of budget column is really the key that I think is going to be your indicator of our financial health. Because we can look at things and say, oh, that's wonderful, state school fund, we're $400,000 higher than last year. Well, but what does that really mean in terms of our budget? So what we want to look at and see is at this same point last year, where were we in terms of our budgeted revenues? We want to see very, very similar numbers, and it was incredible as you put this together. You're right there, you're neck and neck. So you will see we are a little bit higher in our actual receipts on the first line state school fund. We're at 26% already instead of 24%. That is indicative that we might be getting a little more revenue right now than what we think we're actually going to get as the year becomes a little bit more finalized, as our enrollment reports come in, and we're gonna talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. But when you receive 12 payments a year that should be equal, 26% is actually a little bit high because 12, 1/12 of 100 is 8 1/3%. We should be closer to 24.9%, not 26. So we could be receiving a little more state school fund right now than when they rebalance the state school fund, we might see that drop, but that's okay because we're ahead of schedule right now. So it's constantly a massage, but these are the numbers that I like to have people really take a look at. If we go into the next section of the financial report, there's two sections where I'm providing you information on our expenditures. There's a section that provides information on our expenditures by what are known as the functions. What was the activity that money was being used for? And these functions are defined by the state of Oregon, and every school district in the state of Oregon must run their accounting this exact same way. So they're going to compare district by district. What are you spending on the instruction category, support services category, your enterprise facility? And as you can see, because we've been in the summer months, we haven't had a lot of expenditures through August 31st on direct instruction. So this particular report is just our general fund as well. So the instruction for summer school would not be part of these figures. But you would expect that over the summer, you're going to have more costs in your support services than you are in instruction, whereas by next month, you're going to see a big change in that. And then if we can pop on to the next slide, I want to show you here. I think it jumped. If we can go back if we can go backwards, back right there. So again, we're looking at those percentages. Where are we in our budget? And this one came out almost exact. Yes, our next line, we had $123 versus $970. Well, it's a big percentage change. Maybe it's because that budget is a smaller piece, so timing of things. But in the end, we've spent 5% of our budget as of August 31st. Again, those are the expenses by function. Our next slide, though, talks about expenses by what are known as objects. Again, another state mandated coding accounting system. And this will show you for those exact same expenditures, what were they used to be paid for? So we have salaries, those are the gross wages that are paid to the employees. We have associated payroll costs, those are your health insurance and PERS along with some additional taxes. Purchase services, supplies and materials, capital outlay. In the end, our expenditures are exactly the same. The 1.251 year to date at 5%. Interesting, our expenditures are down, which we would expect because of our reductions in staffing. However, we're still at 5%. We're right on where we would expect to be on our expenditures so far. I did want to highlight one section, and this will be something that maybe 2% may or may not be concerning. But what I would expect maybe a board to say is, why, if we're 2 months into our fiscal year, have we spent over 2/3 of the budget for that line item? So if we look at other objects, line 600, last year we'd spent 66%, this year we spent 68%. It's because of what goes into that bucket. That bucket is, the majority of that is our liability insurance, which must be paid July 1, of course. So we would expect that certain line items may be spent upfront. We would expect things like salaries and associated payroll costs. Those are going to be pretty steady throughout the year. So I kind of want to point those out because they're really those key indicators that are going to be able to help define what you're looking at in these reports. Where should we be asking questions? Okay. So one of the keys, and I really appreciate Merle asked this last time, I decided to build something called a general fund financial report key, and this will be page 2 of the report every month. And so what that's going to do is, for that financial report that I gave you, what is in each one of those line items? So starting with the revenues, what makes up local sources or what makes up other state school fund? So this is giving you more of a readable, if you will, version versus our state mandated chart of accounts. What types of things would you expect to see in each of those numbers? So we have one for revenues. Moving on to the next page, I have one for the functions. So what is defined as support services? So support services, which is where we saw a lot of our expenditures so far to date. Those are going to be, the things that facilitate and enhance instruction, the things that are required to allow us to operate as a school. Our maintenance, our custodial services, counseling, district administration, a lot of that is included in the 2000s. And that of course is where insurance and those sorts of costs go. The next slide breaks down your object codes, salaries and associated payroll costs. That kind of makes sense. But when we talk about purchased services, the state has us defined it as that. That actually includes transportation. It includes substitutes. It includes contracted repairs. It includes our utilities. It includes our legal services. So, when you're talking about a purchased service, it's anything that you would hire someone to perform because it is a specialized service. And then that other objects, and I apologize, I had some formatting things in my table here. I apologize, but the other objects, that 600 line that had over 2/3 of the budget gone, it is because the liability insurance is again, the largest portion of that item. So it's my hope that by providing some of this background, it'll give you a little better ability to know what to ask and how to ask it. But it's very important that we continue to monitor where we're at year to date. We continue to monitor our variances. If something is going to be significantly under budget, while that sounds like a great idea, that means though that there may not be resources available for something else that might be needed right now. So those are the conversations that we will continue to have as we move forward. So the financial report ties really closely into enrollment updates, and the finances of a school district hinge greatly on our enrollment, as the enrollment is the #1 driver of your state school fund. Happy to report we have seen increases in multiple grades since our June numbers, where we ended. You end one year, your kindergartners that graduate one year, and you see what is the movement between that June date and when they return in September. The next few days, though, are absolutely critical. So I really want to emphasize that the information I'm about to share with you is a snapshot as of close of school on Friday. And there will be some changes in the coming days. There is an October 1st official measurement date from the state standpoint. We're going to be sharing some historical data on that. But I wanted to take a second to explain what's known as a 10-day drop rule, because this impacts the district not only at the start of the year, but throughout the year. The state of Oregon Department of Education has a rule that any student that misses 10 consecutive days of academic engagement must be unenrolled from the district. So as we are nearing day 10 of school, we will be having to unenroll some students who did not return. While some families do let us know if they move out of the area over the summer, some don't. And so we are marking an absence daily until that day 10, and then we must unenroll those students. So Friday was not yet day 10. So we do need to keep that in mind as we're looking at figures.
Do we know how many people that is?
We won't know how many that is.
I mean, you have an idea if they've missed 9 days so far, I'm guessing.
I had not pulled that data
Okay.
yet. Our offices are very good at getting those attendance in there. I did go back for multiple years to see what that trend line looks like. I was very pleased that it was not dramatic here. But I also wanted to point out this 10-day drop rule. While it does apply at the start of the year for students who do not return, it applies all year long. So extended absences, family vacations, anything that will pull a student out of the classroom for 10 consecutive days results in the loss of an enrollment count. Now, when that student comes back, even if it's day 11, day 12, we re-enroll them,
Sure.
but the district does not get to count that enrollment for that period of time. So we really have, you know, this fluctuation of the number of students that might be enrolled today is going to fluctuate day by day by day based on, you know, those extended absences. So at the end of the year, you know, your enrollment looks very different because you may receive what they call fractional enrollment, fractional ADM for that student that may have missed, maybe they missed 12% of the year. You're only going to receive a fraction of their enrollment when it
Only
comes
if
to
it's 10
funding.
consecutive days though.
10 consecutive, that really is the key, and it has to be without academic engagement.
Sure.
So there are our schools work very hard to reach out to families, find out what we can do to help them, especially if there's any chronic attendance issues. You know, oftentimes we know when a student may be gone for an extended period, and that just is, you know, something we work with. But if they are missing academic engagement for 10 consecutive days, we must unenroll them.
You had mentioned you looked in historical data. What did that look like?
So I'm gonna pop into some slides going forward, and I'll kind of show you what that looks like. So the enrollment report, a full PDF is available online, because I know this is very hard to see here, but I just wanted to point out that what I've done with this is up at the top, kind of in a faded gray, I wanted to provide where we were last year. So I've shifted everything, so I have our kinder number from last year lined up over this year's first graders, because that's the movement we want to see, right? So if we ended the year with 88 kinders, we now have 95 first graders.
Wow.
Great news, right? Now, do we have 95 first graders in their seats every day? Probably not. So how many of those 95 are on day 8 or day 9? Well, excuse me, kinder just started a week later, I believe, but so that was the other part with the absences. We have kids that start on different days, and so some kids are on different day counts, but that is what we're looking at. We had run the numbers on the 5th. We ran the numbers again on the 12th. We saw just a very, very minimal movement there. What will happen every month is I'll be adding another row for you to show how that movement is happening throughout the year. The next slide, I just wanted to give you guys a graph, just this is reality, that since 2010, which really are just seeing the trend line decreasing, and it's been relatively stable, if you will, decrease the last few years. You know, we peaked in 2015 at 1,992, and so right now, being at 1,582. That is, you know, definitely a significant change for the district. This chart shows enrollment on October 1st, except for, of course, 2025, not having met that date yet. This is the September 12th number for 2025, but we'll be updating that for you as well. The next slide though shows, I think, kind of what we're asking to is what's that movement? These are October 1st numbers. I will say that the September 10th-ish number to the October 1st number, I didn't see big drops. Some years I did see 10, some years I saw 2. So but it wasn't percentage-wise a huge drop. But what I've done is I've given a projection based on that historical data that I think we could be at 1,575 on October 1st. Based on this trend data, though, for these prior years of what happens throughout the course of the year, October through June, every year we do see a drop come June. It might be due to positive things such as a student graduating early. It might be due to, unfortunately, some students choosing not to finish out the year. It could be due to moves, it could be that. But there is an October to June ratio. ODE uses that in a lot of their data sets to really see what's gonna happen, you know, what could potentially happen within a district. So we can see the 1.46% has been kind of our average reduction throughout those post-COVID years. I will say a lot of us try to take the 2020, 2021 year out because that was just a very difficult COVID year. And in fact, keeping the 21-22 school year in here can be difficult, but we look at, when we look at this overall, you know, we're seeing pretty consistent figures. So I'm projecting we could end the year around 1,552 actual students. The budget that was presented and approved was built on 1,565, which puts us right in the middle of where we're projecting we could potentially end up. So I don't have significant concerns in terms of the financial projections. I think our team did a phenomenal job of looking at that past data. Would we love to have more students back? Would I love to be wrong on my 1,552, 1,000%, you know, but this is, the data does
Mhm.
suggest that this is what we're preparing for, so. So I know that was a lot of technical, maybe, not sure if it's, I love the nerdy stuff like that, but hoping it provides you guys some insight, and I'd be happy to answer any questions on any of that.
Great. Blake, do you have anything else? Merle,
No, it's good report, appreciate it.
Jenny?
Not super specific. I like this format. I appreciate it. And all the information is good. Are we able to drill down like on the function, like to see? Oh, I love drilling.
So I would love to know what level of detail you guys would like to see on the function, so that is something I was used to, is actually providing it by function. These are what they call parent functions, right? You're
Yeah.
rolling it up to kind of a parent activity. We could drill down as far as you want. We have tens of thousands of account numbers that we
Yeah.
manage. But sometimes having a function may be broken down to, there's a function 1111 is for education of K through 5. 1121 is education of 6 through 8, and 1131 is education of 9 through 12. Maybe not every function, but kind of maybe our primary, and maybe breaking out some of those major pieces. Our special services are in 1220 and 1250. Our, you know, maintenance is in 2540. Oftentimes that's when we want to see what are we spending on maintenance versus all of our other support services. So I absolutely am happy. I would love to have some sort of live, Microsoft BI had done, something like that. I'd
Yeah.
love to have something live like that. I don't know what kind of scale we'd be looking at, and by that I mean cost.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Be happy to, honestly, I could probably have something that this is the standard report, but then maybe there's a detailed report that could be in the background.
Yeah, I'm not asking for any of that, but maybe on a quarterly basis,
Absolutely.
if everybody wanted to kind of drill into, pick one, hey, we want to drill into this. I don't know. I like numbers. I like drilling into the weeds sometimes.
Wait, are you saying you're in the weeds?
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah,
That's
maybe
okay.
keep the elevation 30,000 feet. Kelsey?
I'm good, thank you.
I'll just say, like, this was phenomenal. I love this, like, all the information, all the details, the comparisons. I think this is very beneficial, and I would have had it like when I first started. So, thank you so much. I really value transparency and your projections and keeping us with all this information. So, and maybe, we'll see on your thing. Any others? Good? Yeah.
Let's say, compliments to Kim for the way this is presented in a very easy to understand, but also, like you're talking about, it makes it also very much easier to get curious.
Yeah.
And want to drill
Yeah.
down,
Yeah.
and so it's presented in a really good way, because I got really curious, because I hadn't really seen this until beforehand, and saw that we dropped 30 students from October
Yeah.
to June last year.
No idea.
Seeing that's the largest percentage, like where what schools that those kids are at, what are, what systems can we create to try to say, we know why each one of those students, exited our system, so. Just having it presented in a way that goes, oh, I wanna know more about that, is a really good thing, so thank you, Kim.
Yeah. You're very welcome, yeah, it's, and, we wanna be very clear, like, the 10-day drop, that's not intended to be a punitive thing at all. We encourage families to do, what's best for them and that sort of thing, but it is a way to equalize funding throughout the state, right? Same thing with, a drop throughout the school year, while some of it may be a loss to maybe another program, was it an early graduate, a senior that graduated after, early, so. Having the context for a lot of this is just as critical as having the information, so that we can have these great discussions and start digging into it, so that we can be the place everybody wants to be and wants to stay, and yeah.
Yeah, excellent job. I'm looking forward to next month. Especially that number
Yeah.
of enrollment.
Statewide, everybody's holding, that literally it's a statewide, everybody knows they're waiting for that number, so.
Excellent. Okay, moving on. Dan, you good?
Yep.
Okay. Moving on to board action. We have an OSBA Region 11 board position nominee opportunity.
I brought this up last meeting and brought forward the name of Satya, and so I'm prepared to, and I'll read this motion because it's not my usual language, but it has my intent. And I would just say this on his behalf, that I believe he would bring a balance to the board. OSBA, and we do depend on them for certain substantial information. So now therefore be it resolved, motion that North Marion School District 15 nominates Satya Chandrigi for the OSBA Board of Director position, Marion position 11, 1-year term.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I was contacted by someone in the Woodburn School District, school board that also recommended this individual, so basically speaking.
Excellent, great. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nomination carries. Jenny or Dan, will you, maybe Kim, one of you remind me to make sure we get our documentation? If there's any that we need to fulfill for that?
Yeah.
Thanks. Then on to district reports.
Hello, board. We are here to give our annual 24-25, so last year's report about our integrated plans and programs. This is going to be kind of dry because I'm doing exactly what the state is requiring of us. Last year, I gave a more broad overview and then we had to technically represent because we didn't say the one thing we were supposed to say out loud. So we're gonna do that today. So the SIA, the school school investment account, that's what I thought. The student investment account, we are required by statute to report to you all about our annual progress and how we're doing on our plan. And we need to give you guys this report, not as a consent agenda item where it kind of gets snuck in, but an actual report during an open meeting. We'll also, because of this, have one extra question that we are gonna answer today because we set longitudinal growth targets. And the next slide talks about what is the integrated programs, and if you guys remember, but we have some new board members, so this is our learning of the session. The integrated program was designed to take a lot of different funding streams that are coming from the state and braid them together so that we can create one cohesive plan, since we know that a lot of our work all intertwines and connects to each other. So we have funding streams that are around high school success. We have some funding streams that are around well-rounded education. We have, what are some of the other ones? Our Student Success Act, what else?
There's an early indicator and intervention systems, and then, yeah, and then just the 3 for 24-25.
Right. So, but all of these connect, and they all connect to the direction that we have been setting as a district this whole past year. All of Dan's goals these past years about our 8th grade math success and our 3rd grade reading success and our 9th grade on track and our graduation rates. Those are all part of our longitudinal growth targets that we're setting. And the state asks us to not only measure how we're growing in those areas, but also how do we stretch ourselves to grow a little faster? How do we really make sure that the funding we're doing targets areas where we want to continue to improve? So we have 3 questions that we have to answer this year. And so I'm just going to do some reading here. The first question was, as you review your progress markers and overall reflection responses and reflect on plan implementation, how do you see your progress contributing to the outcomes and strategies in your plan and your longitudinal growth targets, local option metrics? And I will say we did remove our one local option metric that we had. I believe the state is going to be adding it back as part of our new accountability systems. But it was around our CTE calculations because we're working to come up with some better ways to measure that. Before it was the counting of it was really difficult. And so the state said, let's just take those off and then we'll be adding them back in another way. And then we want to discuss one outcome where we feel we've seen progress towards implementation. So as we continue to reflect our implementation efforts, one area where we've seen measurable progress is strengthening parent, family, and student engagement, which is a key area in our integrated plan. Building on last year's foundation of workshops and community events, we have now intentionally expanded our strategies to gather authentic feedback and increase representation. For example, we are now collecting data through Youth Truth to better understand the experiences of our students and families. And we are in the process of developing Spanish-speaking parent advisory teams in each of our buildings to ensure broader access and representation. In addition, we've made a deliberate effort to elevate student voice by working directly with students to identify needs, provide feedback, and shape school improvement priorities. These actions contribute directly to our outcomes related to family and community engagement and align with our strategies to foster inclusive decision-making and shared responsibility for student success. They also support our longitudinal performance and growth targets and our local option metrics by strengthening the conditions that promote attendance, engagement, and academic success across all student groups. Early indicators show positive momentum as families report feeling more connected and empowered, and students are demonstrating greater ownership in their learning experience. This progress is not only addresses immediate outcomes, but also builds sustainable structures and long-term collaboration and improvement. So we saw a lot of these, just to attach some data to this. We're seeing a lot of this data reflected in our Youth Truth data. Parents are saying, yeah, I feel my principal is reaching out. I feel like there's good communication that's happening. We saw improved participation in a lot of events. I know we were hearing buzz just today about the football game on Friday. And as we see more community come out and be connected, we know that we're gonna have better representation from our families. And that's a key part of the integrated plan. So narrative 2. Where have you experienced barriers, challenges, or impediments to progress towards your outcomes and strategies in your plan that you could use support with? Discuss at least one outcome where you have seen challenges or barriers to implementation. While this year's test scores show encouraging improvement, they also underscore the need to sustain and deepen our focus to meeting the diverse academic and language needs of all groups. One key barrier we continue to experience is ensuring that every teacher fully embraces their role as a language instructor, not only just content deliverer. As our student population has grown more linguistically and culturally diverse, our instructional practices have not always kept pace with these shifts. This creates uneven experience for students, particularly our English learners, who need consistent and intentional language supports in all classrooms. While we have made progress in providing targeted interventions and supports, the broader system-wide challenges lies in equipping all teachers with skills, strategies, and mindsets to integrate language and development into their daily instruction. Without this, gains for our most vulnerable learners may not be sustained. To overcome these barriers, we could benefit from additional supports in professional learning and emphasis on language-rich instruction across content areas, coaching that helps teachers translate strategies into practice, and structures that ensure accountability for meeting the needs of English learners. By reinforcing these expectations that all teachers and are language teachers and providing the right tools and ongoing support, we can continue to close these achievement gaps and strengthen student outcomes across the district. And I will say that the reason for that focus, in terms of our data, is that we see that our English only students are outperforming our bilingual students. And for us to be able to ultimately close the gap on our report card and show those really high numbers that we want to achieve, we got to make sure both those student learning groups are achieving at the same level. And so as soon as there's gaps and we're averaging those two scores together, it's always going to bring our overall scores down. And beyond that, we're going to talk later this evening about our focus on language instruction and the fact that because of our population, our need to focus on an academic vocabulary is going to be one of those focuses where the rising tides rise all ships, and we're going to really see improved outcomes for all students because of it. And our last question, and this is just for this year, review the annual metric rates compared to previously created longitudinal performance growth targets and what was there you go, thank you. Oh my goodness. And share reflection on progress. Describe how activities are supporting progress towards targets and if any shifts in strategy implementation are planned for the future based on current progress. Use specific metrics and target types in your reflection. When reviewing our most recent metrics against previously created longitudinal growth performance targets, performance growth targets, and local option metrics, we see promising progress and areas that require continued focus. For example, our state assessment data shows an increase in overall proficiency rates in third grade English language arts, moving from 17% last year to 27% this year. In grade 8, mathematics gains were modest, raising from 8% to 23% proficient. This still represents forward movement towards our LPGT target. Attendance, one of our LOMS, has also improved, with regular attendance rates going from 62% to 66.5%, though this remains above our goal of 20%. Our current activities are directly supporting this growth. Expanded family engagement efforts, such as creation of Spanish-speaking parent advisory groups, are helping reduce barriers to attendance. The use of youth truth surveys is providing more actionable data to address student engagement, and our focus on elevating student voice is creating stronger ownership of the learning process. Additionally, targeted literacy interventions and increased professional learning in evidence-based reading practices are contributing to gains we are seeing in English language arts. That said, our reflection also reveals the needs for shifts in this strategy. While subgroup performance has improved, achievement gaps remain, particularly for English learners. Moving forward, we plan to strengthen professional development to ensure all teachers integrate language development strategies into their content instruction. We will also expand coaching support to help staff with apply these strategies consistently. In mathematics, we intend to refine intervention approaches and better align them with grade level instruction materials. In summary, while metrics show encouraging progress towards our targets, sustaining and accelerating this growth will require continued emphasis on equity-driven strategies, system-wide professional learning, and deeper integration of language supports across all classrooms. That is your official report. We have answered the questions. The state also gives us a bunch of progress monitors, markers that we rate ourselves on. And I can bring those to a future meeting if you'd like to see all of them. We will be posting them online as well. But there's some areas of strength, where we are seeing that growth, or we've already hit a really high standard and we're continuing at that standard. We see improved community engagement, communication, use of equity tools for decision-making, and financial stewardship. And that's an important one, considering that during those transitions and shifts, we want to make sure we're keeping that at a high level. And as today's report shows, we are. We're trying to keep you well informed so that we have a high mark for ourselves. We have opportunities for growth, though. We want to continue to engage with student voice. We've been excited to see the leadership shifts that are happening, for example, at our high school, which is just a prime opportunity to really engage more students and have them have an active voice in their school. We want to really work to improve our 9th grade on track systems. I met with both Nathan and Lindsay and the WESD. That is going to be a key component to us securing future dollars for our high school success. We have to demonstrate better efforts towards 9th grade. And I was excited to hear some of the ideas that the high school is already putting into place, including using our Wednesday time to really use teachers to create interventions for 9th grade. And then we're really wanting to focus on our 412 literacy, and our new grant that we received will help with those efforts as we put in our literacy framework that's going to be district-wide. So those opportunities of growth, we already have some ready-made things that will push on those to get better growth out of them. With that, I'm open to any questions.
Kelsey, you get to go first.
I'm good. Thanks, Des.
Jenny? No questions. Merle?
You report that you're making progress toward Spanish-speaking advisory committees in each school.
Mhm.
And that's apart from the advisory committee that superintendent is doing.
Yeah, kind of
I was
interconnected.
curious, you say you're making progress. When do you expect to have that come to fruition?
Great question. What are those expectations, superintendent?
Well, we haven't formally, we talked as an admin team in August about having one in each building. We have one at the intermediate and middle school, and so looking to have one at the primary and the high school. So wanting to get the school year off and running, but trying to see how we could duplicate some of the good work that's happened at the intermediate and middle school at the primary and high.
So two of them are operational.
Two of them
We're
are
at
operational.
50%.
Yes, yes,
Two
yeah.
more, so you are progressing.
Yeah, we absolutely progressing.
And those were two grassroots led by the principals that saw, like, I need to be better connected to our Spanish speaking community.
And that sounds good to me. I genuinely believe that parental involvement with their students is a key.
Absolutely.
You are absolutely correct, which is why we need to be engaging with those families, all families.
Blake?
Yeah, when you were sharing facts like 8% versus, and it's increased up to 20,
Mhm.
is that for the state testing?
Yeah.
So one of the things I like having kids in the district is when friends and kids are over at our house, I just like to listen. And I've heard them talk about state testing. And it's such a hard thing because you're judged on it here.
Yeah.
But the number of students that are involved in tag and other areas that their parents get them out of even taking the testing is difficult. And they can say for whatever reason they want to not take the test.
Yeah.
And if some of our students that are achieving or doing well in school are not taking the test, obviously that hurts. My question is there a way to better help parents understand the importance of the testing? Is there something there that can help translate that? Because for myself, who's not sit on this board, and my wife Savannah does a lot of that school side of it. If I had a child that was like, oh, we do these state tests, we have no idea what they're for, if I didn't know the upside to it and my child was complaining about it, it'd be like, oh, the sign and be done. But is there a way to better close that gap? Purely a question, don't know, maybe you have. But it makes me wonder, like, if parents understood what could be the upside of it, or what could we do to help them know of the reason we should do that?
So,
Does that make sense, my question?
absolutely, it makes sense. I think there's twofold. The first part of your question in terms of what could we do, I think that's like a question that has like potential to it. I don't have a great answer for it, but I do think that the more we can reach out and communicate, the better. I know that our schools, especially intermediate and middle school, have done a really great job the last couple of years of really trying to communicate with families, like this is the purpose. We're not using these to judge your kids, etc. And our opt-outs from the middle and the intermediate school are really low, actually. Typically, we see that the opt-outs there tend to be more towards students who have anxiety, and who the test is really an anxiety point. But the percentage is really low, and we have been making our state, we have to try to get at least 95% of kids to take the test.
Do you get
We've
that?
met that, yeah, at our middle and our intermediate school every year.
High school?
High school, not so much, and that's the hardest one. And I would say like the high schools is, ooh, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but it's pretty abysmal.
What's the, like, what, if you were selling me on why my kid should do it,
Mhm.
why should they do it? My kids do it, I'm just saying,
Sure.
like, if I'm a
Yeah.
parent, and
It's
my
a,
kid's in high school and I'm battling with my kid on X, Y, or Z, why am I gonna why am I gonna have them do it?
sure, there's a couple of like paths at the high school where there's some benefit to it. For example, I believe, and Mr. Stanley may or may not know, but I believe to do your honors diploma, you must take it and you must receive a passing score, if I'm not correct. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And so there's an honors diploma potential for kids. Some of the other reasoning, though, the state has taken away. So for example, it used to be that kids had to demonstrate essential skills in order to graduate. And the test was a way to demonstrate the skills. If you passed, you made that check mark and you were good. If you didn't pass, we'd have to do additional things to help you demonstrate those. And honestly, passing was the easiest way to do it. It was like, just take the test. That went away with the pandemic and they have not reinstated it. There's rumors that they might, I don't know, I don't think so.
It's a statewide issue at the high school level.
Very much.
And superintendents are frustrated across the state, of the high school level. And I think Eve, actually pre-pandemic, and Nathan, you might know this, they it used to be like that said, that was probably the easiest way for kids to demonstrate that essential skill is to pass that test. And then other tests like ACT started becoming, if you pass that one, well, if I'm already gonna take that for college, I passed it. I'm not, and that you started to see the decline. When the Oregon test was not probably your easiest pathway to demonstrate that. So I do think that we may have, I don't know for sure if we saw an increase or not. I don't know, Joe, if you remember if we saw an increase, how we test students. It versus, like what's the testing environment may have been an indicator. Des, you're shaking your head no.
No, our opt-outs were just as high last year.
So what percent, do you have an idea? So if the other two schools were at 95% or better, what would the high school be? It's ballpark now though.
I would say we're closer to 70, if not even less than
And
that.
so with 70% of students, only 20% pass the test, is that what I understood?
Yeah, so the other issue we deal with the high school test is the students who didn't get, students opt out in a number of ways. Sometimes they do it officially, they have their parents sign or
Or they
slip.
don't take the test. So that's the question I have is listening to those kids over at my house and they say, well, if I take the test quick, I can go do X, Y, or Z.
Yes,
So if you write I'm trying to connect, like, how do you get them to engage and what's the,
yeah,
I'm sure you've spent hours and days working on it, so it's not me
It's-
trying to answer that, it's just really a
No.
question of how to connect those
Yeah,
dots if
it's-
possible.
I think it's one of our most difficult things to answer.
Sure.
I will say this, I believe that there are ways, and I think the student voice component of this discussion is actually a really key part of it, that part of what would help a student be connected is when they feel some ownership and pride in
Sure.
showing I go to a great school and I wanna demonstrate that with these test scores.
Do the kids know that?
I think that's something we haven't talked about enough.
To help them understand the purpose, the goal, what we're trying to do.
Right, and I think it's not only that, but I think it's also giving them something they want to be proud in.
Sure.
So if part of it is, we need these scores to be up and we wanna show how proud we are of North Marion, and someone's like, well, but I'm not super proud of that, then that involvement isn't there. And so the more we create ownership and buy-in, if this is my school, and I am super proud to be a part of North Marion, and I'm super proud to demonstrate that I am one of its scholars, that is gonna go up. And I think as we see the messaging that we're hearing already, where kids are feeling more wanting to be involved and demonstrate themselves, the better
Yeah.
that's going to be. I'll just give an example from when I was a principal. I worked in a school where we talked to kids about this, and we were kind of doing some experimental things, and we could kind of say, for us to justify why we're doing this experimental thing, we need to be able to prove that it's giving us good results. And I remember students just being like, how hard can I work? Because this is important to me and I want to be able to demonstrate that. And so I think there's correlation to that buy-in. And I think as we, the more we get kids involved, the more we give them student voice, the better that.
Yeah, with the kids being involved and them telling their friends, it's gonna go a lot further than any of us sitting in this room talking about how to
Oh.
help them do it, sure.
And the best way to demonstrate that is that is actually what impacts opting out more than anything else. One kid opts out and then they tell their friends, and we will literally see one opt out and the next day 20 opt outs and the next day 5 more opt
Is
outs.
there any restriction on opting out? Can they just write a note and say, my kid gets anxious taking a test and they're done?
Yeah, so with the, when Oregon adopted the Smarter Balanced Assessment, it was actually built into the legislature that parents could opt out for no reason.
Yeah,
Like,
sure.
they did not have to have a specific reason, they could just say, I'm not being out. For the science test or the, like the ELPA test, those are other two, they have to have a specific reason. It's either a religious exemption or because of a special education need. And so our science participation is higher than all the rest because kids don't go to that extreme, but the other one is just sign the letter.
And there's no other way of requiring them to, that's just, they could just write. and say,
Yeah. Our principals do a good job of reaching out to the families and saying like, hey, can I tell you more about the assessment? But usually by the time they filled out that form, it's
They're not
done.
looking to read.
No, they're not looking to change their.
The last question, if we were at 20%, what was the state average?
For math, it was about that same. We're not too far off the state average. Math is kind of not great across the board.
20%.
23.
There's a dashboard online that you can access all of our information as public.
Yeah, yep. And we will have school report cards coming out here fairly soon, that will show it as well. The state average for English, I don't know right off the top of my head.
Thank you. That's all I got.
Thanks, Des.
Two quick add-ons to that, so I agree that establishing the culture of we always do our best and everybody's going to go and do their best amongst the kids is the best way to go. At the intermediate school, Dave did a thing last year talking about the importance of tests. I heard, I don't know what grade that kid was in, but he got up and said, I'm doing it because North Marion Intermediate's a great school and I want to tell everybody, so I'm doing my best. You should all do your best.
Kind of like,
Yeah,
where did you say that?
in front of the whole school at the intermediate school. And so that was pretty cool. And the only thing that, that you in the political arena could do is when this issue comes up, and it periodically does, and it usually falls along party lines as to whoever initiated that test, the other side tries to debunk it.
Sure.
And that's where you see this politicizing of, one group wants to say, well, we put too much emphasis on tests. And the other group tries to say that, that the state's doing too much controlling, so we should let kids opt out. So you can use a political arena and just say they all should test.
All right, thanks, Des.
Yep.
All right. So how do we wanna,
I don't know. I think I can sit up here for a minute and Cheryl, and then I'll swap out and then run it where the principals are talking.
okay, that sounds good.
the,
Are you ready for the?
yeah.
Link.
Right now. Anybody else want it?
Anybody else wants the dashboard link? No,
it goes.
you probably saw. There you go. Thank you.
Okay,
Okay, so, first of all, I wanna, and I'll say it again at the end, thank, the principal team for being here this evening. To share, their work, getting the school year off to an amazing start. And so, on the next slide, this has been our focus, our initiatives for this year with, this wheel / puzzle. Sometimes it's a wheel, sometimes it's a puzzle. It all fits together though. And so where we've really been able to share with the staff. What is our focus for this year? And it's in this area of collaborative teams, educator effectiveness. And supporting language acquisition. And I'm not gonna read those bullets out there, but it gives you some greater understanding of what those things are. And so Des and I are gonna tag team the first part of this and then hand it over to our principals. We're kind of covering the why, and then they're gonna talk about the how and what they did in various aspects of this. The collaborative teams really is based on the premise that teamwork, if you've ever been a part of an effective team, you know how powerful teamwork can be. Because you have common goals, you build trust, and you have mutual support. You don't have to carry the burden on your own. And having done this work for a really long time, public education has really encountered some common challenges. And it assumes that teaming occurs naturally. It actually doesn't oftentimes, especially as teams are kind of put together. You know, it's not like trying out for the basketball team and the top 10 kids that have always played together made the team. You have teachers that have come together from different universities, different backgrounds and experiences. And now they're expected to team. And in my experience, you had 10 teams in a school, maybe 1 or 2 at the most would just kind of click automatically just because the right makeup. Everybody else honestly struggles. And so those have been some common challenges. And the other big challenge is when we try to force teachers into teams and give them unmeaningful work, and then teaming feels like a big waste of time. So these are just kind of 2 things to be talking with our principals about, is making sure that we're addressing these common challenges that teams have. So the keys to success is go slow to go fast. So don't give people too much. My encouragement to staff was to stay curious, but be honest. So in other words, like, give this a little bit of a chance, stay curious that these teams that our principals are designing for you, be curious about them, but be honest if it's, again, that waste of time piece. And giving that feedback, which you'll hear me talking, which is really the next thing there is feedback up and down the chain of command. So how do principals give teams feedback, but then how does that feedback go back up the chain to say, this is our team struggling because of this, or this is not meaningful work?
so the other piece of the why, just to talk a little bit about what we're doing with collaborative teams, this is during our Wednesday early release time. And we've been doing some form of this for quite a while now, but what we've seen is that we feel like we're only unleashing a small part of the potential. Our like teams, usually grade level or subject level, work together, they do a lot of planning together, we see good work happening. But we know that if we could actually leverage them to also share their expertise about instructional strategies or how to reach certain kids, or if they could share data where they could talk about where they've seen successes and analyze why they got those successes and seeing if we could scale up those successes to the rest of the team, that's when we could see some real progress being made. So the work is going to really focus on helping teachers understand how to collaborate better by teaching them protocols and different strategies so that those conversations are really effective. And on the next slide, the real driver of this is actually based in research. So John Hattie is an educational researcher. He's a meta researcher. He does research about research. And so he's looked at all the different research that's been done about all the different things you can do to impact a kid. And he looks to see what the effect size is. The effect size is based on the concept that that 1 year's worth of like effort should equal 1 year's worth of growth for a kid. And what they have found is the most effective thing that it can impact a student's education and getting over a year's worth of growth from them is when we have good collective efficacy from teachers. And collective efficacy is basically when teams collaborate and they're all moving in unison and really saying, hey, we have a common vision, we have a common goal, and we're working on it together. We can get 1.6 years worth of growth out of a student for 1 year's worth of input. So we know when we're working on our collaborative teeth and actually really doing it well, we could be making substantial impacts on student growth.
So then shifting into talking about supporting language acquisition is I presented this slide to you in the spring and I presented it to the staff at the kickoff. We have changed, our demographics have changed in North Marion. And so we have to change our practices in response to who we serve. And really, as Des was describing earlier in her previous presentation, next slide. You know, language acquisition language is how we build connections with one another. And when we have assumptions that we all understand the same thing, that's why sometimes it's important to slow down. We do a lot of acronyms, slow down and make sure, are we all on the same page? Because if I'm a teacher teaching and I'm assuming that maybe through context clues, the word that I used made sense to everybody, that assumption creates confusion. Because not everybody is going to understand the context clues that somebody used in a classroom. So we have to get more explicit with our language. And all students benefit from this. All students benefit from clear language instruction. And so for this year in this particular area, we're really trying to get greater clarity and more intentional focus on what does it mean to be a language teacher.
So, and that connects to what I was saying, where we know if we're doing this right, it will actually benefit all students, because the core to the language instruction, and this is a crux of the grant we just received, is focusing on the concept of disciplinary literacy. And for a long time, the concept of disciplinary literacy fell more into this category of like reading across the curriculum, like we're gonna make everyone read, but the thought was like, we're gonna make you all read novels, or everyone would do silent reading, or everyone would do some writing activities. And often they would feel frustrated, the teachers would feel frustrated and kids would feel frustrated because they're like, well, what does this have to do with the class I'm in? But the reality is actually, kids are back. Reality is that there are specific learning and reading and writing and speaking strategies that exist within each content area. And then we actually have to teach students how to be math readers, how to be social studies readers, how to be English readers, and that those are different skills for each one. So for example, if you think about what it is to read a literature textbook, you're looking at stories and short stories and excerpts from novels. How to read a math textbook, completely different. How to like know what's important, what's not important, how to write so that you're being literate in math, even more so in social studies. How to read a social studies, how to read primary text, how to read original text, etc. Those are completely different skills. And if we do not have our teachers within those contexts teaching students how to read in their subject area, students are lost, much like Dan was saying. It's not a common shared vocabulary because these are students, they're still learning. And so our goal is to help our teachers understand what are the reading and writing and speaking strategies I use in my discipline, and how do I teach kids how to use them more effectively. There's a great statistic out there that I have to bring in a future meeting, but they were talking about language roots, like roots and suffixes of words. And often when we teach those to students, we only teach them in your English class, but the majority of them are never actually used within literature. They're used in science and math. So if you think about bio, for example, that is completely used in a science concepts and science concepts. If you expect me to teach it within the concept of an English teacher, as a literature teacher, I may give you a good understanding of it, maybe, but you're really gonna understand it if I'm teaching it to you in your science class. So helping understand all the different layers of language that they need to be approaching as they help kids learn in their subject area.
And then the last part of our puzzle is educator effectiveness, which really is about our new evaluation observation system. And this was the slide I presented to the staff, and this I previously was titled feedback, and because really educator effectiveness is about providing great feedback, which I like to refer to up and down the chain of command or the chain of responsibility. And so feedback that goes down the chain from an administrator to a teacher should build confidence. It should provide clarity around, is the teacher hitting the mark of what the things that we are looking for in classrooms? And it affirms their efforts and their work. But we also need feedback up the chain of command. Because when you're able to go to your supervisor and give them maybe some critical feedback, and you're not afraid of repercussions or reprisals, that is a huge trust builder in a school. And it leads to a healthy climate and culture. So we wanna, one of the things we're asking the principals to do, they did it right after the in-service week, was how effective was the in-service? You know, that they presented and provided, and what areas could they do better? After doing observations, they've developed a short survey. Was the feedback I gave helpful? So when teachers will be honest with their supervisor about the feedback they're getting, that will lead to a healthy climate and culture. Which only exists when staff feel safe, when the feedback is focused on skills, and all of our behaviors change as a result of the feedback that we're giving. So if a principal gives feedback on the skills that maybe a teacher needs to improve on, and behaviors change as a result, that principal is gonna be more inclined to give more feedback. Hey, I saw you use a different, call strategy with your students. Great job. I saw more kids participating. When we focus on those skills, and if a principal is responsive to the feedback a staff member gives them, teachers see that, and it's gonna reinforce that, hey, I can give feedback and it's a safe place to do it. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to our awesome principal team to talk about how they rolled out one or more aspects of basically one aspect of the puzzle.
You want us to like go up in your.
Why don't you stay as a team there? You're already lined up. You're looking pretty
Thanks, that
comfortable.
makes me feel better.
Yeah, there you go.
Perfect, all right,
Yeah,
primary school, so we spent a little bit of time on the in-service days in August, laying some groundwork, and then last Wednesday, we dug into collaborative teams a little bit deeper, where we went over the what about collaborative teams. These two already kind of shared that, but about the common purpose and then student learning at the center. And it's really going to go through a cycle of inquiry. So about each trimester, we'll go through a new cycle of reflecting of did the students learn what we wanted them to learn? What kind of information are we analyzing, taking data into consideration? Did the students learn what we wanted them to learn? And then based on that information, making a plan and then acting on that plan. So we'll continually do these cycles throughout the year. And really working on trust and shared commitment. So at the primary school, we have a variety of team compositions. So the obvious one, grade level. So we had kindergarten, first and second grade meet together, but then we also have job alike. So this last week we had PE, music and library meet, but we also are having conversations about like K-5 job alikes meeting. Special education will meet once a month or once every other month, K-5 and ELD. We also have classroom and building programs, so maybe a lead teacher and instructional assistants, or kindergarten teacher and the instructional assistants that might be helping their classroom, a time to come together. And then we may have teams that have reading coaches, learning specialists, behavior specialists, counselors, and so what we have is kind of a fluid, so depending on what's happening or the information, the data we have, our teams may fluctuate a little bit. And all of the agendas are shared with our entire building, and so if we have the ability to kind of see what's happening, and maybe sometimes our reading coach might join second grade, or our counselor, we might be having some, you know, things happening and might need to support at grade level or vice versa. So we have some fluidity in that. And so on Wednesday, we went over all the why and the what, and then our teams came together and established norms and how they want to operate and feel as a team. And we used a specific protocol for that. And then teams are beginning to look at their curriculum maps, look at their pacing, look at standards. And we even had some teams having conversations of, hey, we have this assessment coming up. Do we need that information to move forward with this learning? And, you know, we all need to do it, or if one person does it, should we all do it? You know, just having those conversations about what kind of information do our teams need to be able to look at student growth and learning over time. There you go.
All right, you know, when we first returned and we had an opportunity to see the initiatives wheel, it brought real clarity to us, and it was nice to be able to translate that clarity to our staff. And I know that there's gonna be an opportunity for Des to receive some props for this, but I really want to say that when we got back and we saw that initiatives wheel, and then we saw the website and all the materials that she designed, some real great thinking, deliberate, intentional thinking had gone into how to make this happen. That really supported us as an admin team, and made it easier for us to be able to transit over to staff. So again, coming back to the in-service days, we had a unique opportunity at the intermediate school this year. It's the first time I've been there that we didn't have to have any kind of curriculum or assessment training, and so we had a little bit more time to kind of dive into it. And so we were able to really dive into all three of the initiatives, but we spent the bulk of the time on the collaborative teaming, and you can see why. You know, you've already heard it, so I'm not gonna repeat it too much, but it leads to all the other great things. You know, that is the major catalyst. And like Cheryl was saying, we've got a variety of teams from grade levels to specials to ELD, and there's some wrestling in that with how do those team compositions make up, because if you're a technology teacher or a music teacher, you ask yourself, how do I team when maybe there's no one else that in this building looks and sounds just like my content. And you know, the four overarching questions that we're encouraging everyone to ask, and there's kind of there's a loose tight model to this, and the tight of it is some of the logistical pieces and how we're working through, how we're taking notes, how we're agreeing on team norms, facilitation roles. And then there's four questions that are driving all of this work. You heard Cheryl reference, it's a shift from getting together and talking as a team about what are we gonna do tomorrow? Oh, we were on page 263 today. Are we gonna get to 265 by the end of the week? It's a shift from what we're teaching to a shift to what are students learning? And then asking yourself the question, how are we gonna measure that? What's a reliable measurement of that? Is it just the weekly test at the end of the week and then you just move on? Hopefully not. Hopefully it's a better common assessment that you're able to look at and go, gosh, how do we now come together as a team and really say, who's got it? Who doesn't? And what are we gonna do about it? That's what's one of the most exciting components to this whole process, to me is the fact that typically in my 26 years, we just keep moving forward. We have this invisible compelling force that tells us teach a lot of standards and keep moving forward. More than ever in today's world, we've got to be able to teach less and learn more. We've got to be able to give ourselves permission to kind of come back to those questions and say, if they're not getting it, why would we keep moving forward? Why wouldn't we say, well, how many need to get this, and how are we going to respond to it? How do we be creative with it? And that's what's exciting and compelling about this to me. The loose of it is how they go about it. And so Our current focus right now at the intermediate school, since we've done some of the norm work and stuff, they're diving into the standards and trying to identify what are the essential pieces that we really want kids to know and be able to do. They're really analyzing their curriculum maps and seeing, do we need to make adjustments? And that's the work that they're doing. And then what we've done to be kind of creative at the intermediate is, you know, the legislators passed some legislation a few years back that said we have to have 150 minutes of PE every single week, but they didn't pass extra funding for that. So we don't have an extra gym, we don't have an extra teacher. So we've had to be creative with our schedule at the intermediate, and we created a near 30-minute period every day called SPARK, which is an acronym for structured physical activity and recreation. I forget the K, but it's something cool, right? Spelled wrong. It's cool with the K. We're gonna take and establish a weekly rhythm. When we run the professional learning time calendar and we're coming up to collaborative teams, every Tuesday, myself and the PE teacher and some of the instructional assistants, rather than teachers going out and running that 30-minute spark time, which is a structured extension of PE, not an additional recess every day. We're gonna tap in and give teams that time to go and congregate and build their agenda and get their resources together so that we're not losing that time on Wednesday. So then when they come on Wednesday to collaborative teams, they can jump right in. They've already talked 24 hours in advance. What are we doing? What are our facilitator roles and who's taking notes? And then we designed a share out. Cheryl and I were talking about, gosh, how great would it be if folks could come back together and just even share out. We're gonna have the first, at least till December, we're all gonna work in the library together, just to kind of space ourselves out so we're not overly loud. But then at the end of every one of those Wednesdays, they'll go through that share out protocol and come back Thursday morning and just quickly share out. So we all know where other teams are making progress. So just really compelling and great work that I'm so curious to see where it goes for us this year.
Great. Middle school. All right. Well, the beauty of a wheel is it's got 3 parts and it takes all of them to roll. So, you know, so middle school, we're kind of working on collaborative teams. Just one point on that real quick is with all of our staffing changes, all of our teams are new in some form or fashion. Our science team is the only one at the middle school that hasn't had a new member. So either that's somebody from one of the other buildings or got shuffled around within the middle school. So as Dan talked about, building trust within those teams so they can be effective. That's that go slow, go fast that we're working on. So beyond the collaborative teamwork, we're focusing on our language acquisition. Again, that was another staffing change. So we've got a new teacher, that's our ELD teacher. And then providing some resources for them. So with our ELD teacher, you know, we've got classes for everyone from newcomers to our level 3s and 4s, in addition to monitoring those that have exited the program for those remaining years. Then for 6th grade, our model is a little bit different. We've actually embedded that to one of our former ELD coaches' social studies class. And one of the primary reasons we've done that is 6th grade already has a middle school academy. And so if those students were also in their ELD class, they wouldn't have access to any of the other electives that 6th graders get. So by embedding that in the 6th grade, that still allows students receiving ELD services to at least get one of their elective wheel options throughout the year. And so that's kind of how our program is set up. But as Des and Dan mentioned, we've got language learners in all of our classes, and all of our teachers need to be focused on that language development acquisition as well. So Elevation is a program we subscribed to last year. We're working on kind of digging into that and how we can utilize that. It's a great one-stop shop for information about all of our language learners as they're up-to-date information and assessment scores. Beyond that, one thing I think we take for granted, those assumptions we make is that, you know, we tell a teacher, well, this student's intermediate at writing. What does that mean for a 7th grader? That's intermediate writing. So within this website tool, you know, it describes that. So an intermediate writer will be writing this kind of level of sentence or complexity of sentence or essay. Or if you're a beginning writer, yeah, probably not jumping right into that 5-paragraph essay right away. So we're going to build the scaffolds and supports not only in their ELD classes, but in all of their classes, so they can be successful. Access the academic vocabulary, access the content. It also really deprivatizes that, because when we have that information that's kind of in the head or the computer programs of one or two teachers, yeah, they want to get it out there, but that opportunity, there's, one ELD teacher or coach, 6 academic teams, when can they get to them in a timely manner? So this really gives that opportunity for teachers to get in, find that information when they need it, or when their collaborative team is talking about a certain student who may be a language learner, that they can kind of get to those specific levels of where they're at and adjust their instruction and their scaffolds based on the needs, versus kind of guessing or doing their best guesswork. So that's kind of where we're focused right now, getting started, but of course, that all ties together, and we're hoping that through that work with our ELD program, that makes for more rich conversations with our collaborative teams to build on the language acquisition. Great.
All right, so one of the things that we worked on last week, and we did a number of the same things that the other buildings were working on through the pre-service week. One of the things that we wanted to do was to draw a real coherent through line between these other areas and the professional goals that our teachers are setting, or our licensed staff are setting. So Senate Bill 290 back in, I think, 2012, changed the way educators do our professional goals. So it required, instead of back in the day, teachers would set a goal like, I want to get better at using instructional technology. And then they kind of have like, what I need to do that. And then that would be something that they turn in. And then at the end of the year, their evaluator would meet with them how to go. And that was it. So the Senate Bill 290 required accountability so that you have 2 student learning growth goals and 1 professional learning goal. And those student learning growth goals, or slugs, as some people refer to them, have to be written in SMART goal format. So what we wanted to do is to try to leverage those collaborative teams in order to help our staff create goals, professional goals, and student learning growth goals, which are directly tied to the work that they're doing in their collaborative group. So if we flip to the next, one of the things that we want to use or leverage is improvement science, which comes actually from the medical profession, in particular hospitals, where what people try to do is implement a change idea, and it's just one small step. And then they go through, it's plan, do, study, and then act. And the idea is that tomorrow or on Wednesday when we meet, we're going to be going over some different options that they can work within. And the idea is to get beyond a real finite process where I set a goal like at this unit, I want to see 8% growth between the pre-assessment and the post-assessment, or 50% growth, or whatever it is. And that's typically the way it used to be. I'd have like unit 2 in my math class. I take a pre-assessment, we do the instruction, and then we take the post-assessment, and then we measure that growth between the two. And it's a real simple way of doing that. What we want to do is keep that growth going. And so we're collecting all sorts of different change ideas, which is just really, it could be an instructional strategy, it can be something that you do, greeting students, making them feel welcome, and then trying to measure that impact over time. So if we go to the last slide. So this is just an example that you can implement. So show growth between trimester 2, using a particular change idea called structured roles. The idea is that in group work, oftentimes students will dominate the work or the talking. Some kids will recede, some kids will do most of the work, or kind of dominate the airtime. And so the idea is that everyone has a very specific role, and that protocol ensures 100% engagement. So the idea here, the theory of action, as it were, is that we're implementing this change idea, and that we'll see an improvement in student learning over the course of 4 weeks. And so we've also tied it specifically to, the effective educator framework. And then you can see just kind of the outline of a PDSA. So, anyway, that's pretty much the gist of it.
All right. Do you have any questions?
I will say this is very informative. And, yeah, we do use that in the hospital. And, I just really like that each school, each of the principals in the schools are collaborating together to make movement for the students, but I'll go around. Kelsey? Jenny? Merle?
I don't have specific questions.
Blake?
Thank you for your presentations.
All right, well, I want to thank our principals for giving up another night of their week and for being here and putting all the time in and the excellent way you implemented this. It was great to see you during your in-service weeks, and I know you're busy preparing for the Wednesday early releases and whatnot. And as Dave alluded to there, Desiree put in a ton of time over the summer. These guys got to come back from summer and then had folders, electronic folders, had drives of resources at their fingertips. And she's an incredible teammate to me, and you know, it's great to work alongside someone who not only thinks a lot like you do, pushes on you when you need to be, but then also can kind of come and have a vision that makes sense to people. And so I just wanted to take a minute here this evening to thank her for all the work that she is doing to make this vision. And so really comes from a place of, she's an incredible supporter to those who are doing the work. She really loves to serve those that are doing the work. So I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that.
I mean, I spoke to it a little bit, but I was actually floored when she said, here's some of the materials, and then we got to kind of start to dive into them, the levels that exist. I thought to myself, and I think I even told Dan this, and I don't know if I told Des this, I probably would have been too embarrassed, but I think I said to Dan, I was like, I think she's in the top 1% of organizational brains. You guys, she's created an entire website for the entire staff with all the repository areas for all the materials, and it's all linked and it's accessible. And it feels like in 1 month, she did about 5 years worth of work. So I don't want to eat up all their time.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've worked in the seventh and the seventh largest and the largest school district in the state, where they have armies of people doing this work. And they do way less than in a short fraction of a time. So yeah, it's pretty admirable to see the productivity and effectiveness that Des has.
Yeah, I've had the benefit of being on the admin team with Des in the past for a number of years. I know you're gonna get what you need. Beauty of this, especially with being a transition at the middle school this year, is it allows me to focus. Like, I know I can find something without having to go online and spend hours and hours of research that she's already done on our behalf. Put it together in a very functional way that has thought out not only what we will need, what questions are the teachers gonna ask as they dig through it. So, yeah, it's how to FAQ and get it done all in one.
I went into this conversation, like this presentation, like we should have practiced this. But it really came together, and that is a testament to what Des has put together to help lead us as building leaders for our teachers and students. Just being able to bring this information to you in this way is all her, and setting up for our success and student success.
The last thing I'll say on this is the educator effectiveness piece. I've shared with a few superintendents and HR people, and she even she says, Did you tell Hood River about this? Did this? And so now it's getting out, kind of the work that she's done, because she's removing all the barriers that districts have been dealing with
We don't need to
forever.
headhunt.
Yeah. Good point. So, even to where they said, you guys should present this at an HR thing, because she's really removed a lot of the barriers that make the evaluation piece hard. So thank you very much.
And I'll just add to that, being on the board for a long time with Des, that I appreciate all the information that you're willing to bring forward constantly. And I even appreciate mostly that when I have feedback that I need it in a different way, or I want it to drill down, or I want to understand the background of some of it, you're so open and willing, and you feel like a collaboration with the board where you're right alongside of us to help us learn as much as we want to learn and to help us make educated decisions from this aspect. So above and beyond all that you do for them, you also make it really easy as a board member to ask questions and to make decisions, and I appreciate that immensely. So thank you very much.
I will say this, not that I'm almost gonna regret saying this out loud, but it's my birthday today, and that was a nice little gift right there.
Happy birthday.
Nobody knew.
Stealth mode.
That's also why I was randomly not paying attention, because I'm getting text messages. Like,
Oh, that's so good.
All right, so we're wrapping up here.
Yep.
So, the board retreat is on Tuesday, September 30th, and we have 4 planned activities. It's, so one of it will be having a discussion around the strategic plan.
Mhm.
Another one will be finalizing the board superintendent working agreements. We will be doing an activity where you will get to interact with our new teacher evaluation rubric, where we will, I'm thinking what I'll do is probably put you in 2s or 3s and have you come up with a list of, if you were looking for this in a classroom, what would you hope to see? So that's an activity that our principals did. So we're gonna compare with what you come up with what they came up with. And then the last thing will be doing the first read on the policy. So it's a work session / retreat on the 30th, and we will be providing dinner at 5:30.
Yes. Questions on that?
Is there anything? Go ahead, Merle.
I missed number 2.
Number 2 was superintendent board working agreement, I think, for strategic plan.
Mm-hmm.
And then you guys will do an activity where you're looking at our teacher evaluation report.
So it's at 5:30?
Dinner's at 5:30, work session retreat immediately following, and it'll be in here.
Okay. I know I jammed a lot into it. I promise we'll look through that.
And so, and then the last reminder is feedback or questions on the board policies by the 25th, which is next Thursday. I am gonna be adding another AR into the mix of a policy. It's a staff expense. We don't have an AR for that policy. I've drafted an AR. I'm gonna throw it into the mix there for your feedback. So
How would you like that feedback?
just an email. And if you want to put it on a spreadsheet, if you want to create a spreadsheet, create a document, however you want it developed, however you want it to, just email it to me.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I will make a note, before we adjourn, that I had forgotten that Robert had an excused absence for this evening. Forgot about that. All right. Anything else quickly? Like, Merle? Kelsey, good, all right. Happy birthday to Des. 1944, I'll adjourn.
You know, Peggy's a